Hey guys, welcome to Ben Wrenching. My name is Ben, and today I'm wrenching on this 2011 Mazda CX-7. I'm finally almost done with this car. I just got to get the rear brake switched out. I've got parts and tools ready to go, and I'm ready to get this car done, so let's get after it. Alright, so I started by jacking the car up and putting a jack stand underneath. I still use my jack as a safety net, and I put the tire under the car as an emergency backup. I've also got the front wheels chalked, and that's important because I'm not going to use the parking brake since I'm doing the rear brakes. So I can start by removing the caliper and the caliper bracket. These are 14mm bolts holding the caliper on, and I should be able to take those off with my battery ratchet. I'm going to thread the top bolt back in just a few threads, and then I can take the bottom bolt out all the way. And with that one out, I can go ahead and remove the top bolt and hang the caliper. And before I do, I'll compress the piston. And then I can hang the caliper right here so it's out of the way. Next, I can remove these brake pads, and these are coming out pretty easy, which is good news. There's a little bit of life left on these, but since I was doing the front brakes, I figured I'd go ahead and do the back too. These rotors looked pretty rusty, so I think it was time to change them out anyway. And even though the front pad had some life left, this back pad has a pretty bad ridge on it, and that can cause some issues. There is a bit of noise coming from these rear brakes, but these caliper slide pins are not seized up, so that's good news. I will go ahead and take these out, and we can clean them up before we put them back in. I also want to inspect these boots and make sure that they're not ripped or look like they need replaced. These look fine, so I'm going to go ahead and reuse them. To take the caliper bracket off, there are 2 bolts on the back side as well, and those are 17mm bolts. So I'll start by loosening up the top bolt. And with that loose, I can loosen up the bottom and take it all the way out. And then I can go ahead and finish the top bolt. And I'll take this bracket off and set it aside. Normally these rotors will have 2 screws here holding the rotor down. Those have been deleted on this car, and I'm okay with that. To get those out, I use an impact driver. I'll link the video I did on the front brakes in the description so you can see how I use that to get those out. So since this rotor is probably rust welded on here, I'm going to use some PB Blaster anywhere I can put it to loosen it up. Next, I'll try hitting it on the face with a hammer. I just want to make sure I don't hit the studs. And this one actually looks pretty loose, so that's good news. And if you have trouble getting it off, it's probably getting hung up on the parking brake, so I'll loosen that up just a bit. I just need to remove this cover to get access to the parking brake adjuster. And then I just need to line up the hole with the parking brake adjuster. It's got a wheel with grooves on it that allows you to adjust the parking brake. So I'll use a screwdriver and stick it in there and roll that down, and that'll release the parking brake. So I'll use my pry bar to adjust that and loosen it up off of the rotor. And it looks like it's seized up and I can't get it to adjust, so there's one other thing I can do using just a regular bolt. There's a hole right here that you can thread a bolt into. So I'll run that down and push the rotor off the face of the hub. And now the rotor's loose enough to get it off all the way. So this is the parking brake adjuster that I mentioned. Normally you can turn this, but this one is seized up pretty bad. So if you can't get that freed up, you may need a new wheel cylinder too. Alright, so after using a hammer and a screwdriver, I was able to loosen this up. I think the PB Blaster and some brake cleaner helped, but now I can adjust this with just a screwdriver. And the rotor slides on and off pretty easily now. So that'll help us get the new rotor on. You can take these shoes off. There's one spring down here. There's a bracket that it sits in on the bottom. So you can just take that spring out, pull it forward, slide this part down off the wheel cylinder, unthread these, and put some new grease in there. I'm not gonna do that because I can adjust this freely now, and I'll be able to get the new rotor on with them adjusted in all the way. So at this point, I'm ready to clean everything up. I'll clean the threads of some of the bolts and clean up this hub face, and then we'll get the new rotor on. with everything cleaned up and the new rotor on, I did use a lug nut to cinch the rotor down to the hub to make it a little easier to install everything else. And with the hardware cleaned up, I can go ahead and install the caliper bracket. I'll get the top bolt started by hand, and then I'll do the same with the bottom bolt. And then both of those get torqued down to 65 foot-pounds. Next, I can go ahead and install the brake pad hardware. These are going to clip right in here, and these fit either the top or the bottom, and I can use a towel to push them down in there. It may help to put some grease under these, but I really shouldn't have to. I did get this set off Amazon. It was the cheapest that I could get the quickest. I will link it in the description, but the hardware for the front pads was pretty difficult to get on too. So you really shouldn't have to use a punch and a hammer, or in my case, a square file. But it did work to get these flush on here, so I'm okay with it. And before I put the pads on, I will put some brake parts lubricant on both of these. I did get a new tube of brake parts lubricant, and my old tube is so old that they have rebranded since then. So I think I got my money's worth out of this one. So I'll just put a little bit of lube on both of these, and then I'll spread it out. And then to install the pad, I can turn it out just a little bit, fit it in here, and then push back and slide it in. And then I can do the same for the inside pad. Spread some lubricant here and on this side too. Turn the pad out and get it into the clips. And then I can push back and slide it in. And I just want to make sure that these slide in and out freely. Alright, so that's not bad. So next I can lube up the slide pins and get these in. And this bottom one has this rubber ring and it looks like it's still in good shape, so I'm going to reuse it. You can replace that as well as the slide pins whenever you do a brake job, and it's really not a bad idea. So with just a little bit of lubricant, I'll go ahead and slide this in and twist it so that the lubricant spreads out. And I can push it in all the way until it locks onto that boot. And just make sure that it turns freely and moves in and out. So I'll do the same with the top one. Just a little bit of lubricant, and then as I put it in, I'm going to push and turn so that I spread that lubricant out. Lock it down on the boot and make sure it moves freely. You should be able to see these bounce back out after you push them in. Alright, so both of those feel good. I can go ahead and get the caliper on. So before I get the caliper on, I will need to compress this piston to get it around the new pads. Before I do that, I'm going to take the cap off the brake fluid reservoir. This helps give the brake fluid somewhere to go, and it also reminds me to check the level when I'm done. I'll just have it off while I depress the caliper piston, and then I'll put it right back on. I'll use this caliper piston tool and one of the old brake pads to depress the piston. I'll just put the old pad up against the piston and slide this in, and then tighten it down to depress the piston. This will help give me more room for the new brake pads since they're thicker. And before I go all the way down, I'm going to check the brake fluid level. And I just wanted to check and make sure that it wasn't overflowing before I push this in all the way. So that should be pretty good. I'm going to stop there. The piston looks about flush with the boot, and now it should slide over the new brake pads. And to get the caliper to fit over the slide pins, I need to turn them so that the flat side fits into the caliper. And these bolts get torqued down to 20 foot-pounds. And the last thing I need to do is adjust the parking brake. Since I ran it in all the way to get the old rotor off, it's pretty loose right now. So I'll line up the hole with the adjuster, and then I can use a screwdriver to adjust it until I get it right where I want it. And that is too loose, so I'll tighten it a little bit. And it helps to get 2 lug nuts on to get the rotor flush up against the face of the hub. And with the parking brake engaged, I can't turn it at all. So I think that's pretty good. I'll go ahead and put this cap back on. And the last thing I want to do is bleed some of the old brake fluid out of the caliper. And the bleeder screw is right here at the top of the caliper on the back. I'll take the cap off. I'll clean up the threads with a wire brush. I'll use just a little bit of PB Blaster. I'll use a 10mm wrench on the bleeder screw. And then I can hang this brake bleeder bottle on the caliper. I'll put the tube on the bleeder screw and then open that up and drain some of the old fluid out. This fluid looks pretty clear, so I'm going to go ahead and close it up. This is a good idea because then we make sure that there's no air in the line. We get out some of the old dirty fluid, and we can check the level and replace it with fresh fluid. I'll link this in the description too. So with that tightened back up, I can put the cap back on. I'll just clean it up with some brake cleaner first. And now I'm ready to get the wheel back on and rinse and repeat everything for the other side. Alright, and I am finally done with the Mazda. Well, almost. I still got to bed the brakes, and I will put the procedure for that on the screen now. You don't have to do that, but it does help the brakes last longer. It is a best practice, so I would recommend it if you can do it. And with a pile of rusty parts, a full trash can, and a couple of handfuls of tools, I got 4 projects done on this car. I'll link the parts and tools that I used in the description as well. Thanks for coming along for the rear brakes. I also have a video for the front brakes. And if you're really interested in content for this car, I also did a video replacing the serpentine belt. And the 4th of 4 projects these last couple weekends was a window motor. It was actually just a plastic gear for it that fixed an issue that we had with the window. So with that, I am done. I'm going to give the Mazda back to its owner. Subscribe if you guys haven't already, and check out some of my other content. Drop a comment and let me know how your project goes. Thanks for watching as always, and I will catch you guys in the next video.